1960s. It is a sunny summer day. The sun warms the stones of the historic centre. The three towers soar in the clear sky, and in Liberty Square, curious tourists who arrived from the Riviera on a small car roam around. San Marino wakes up. After the difficult years of reconstruction, emigration and poverty, the economic boom starts here as well. Houses and streets change, so do dreams, and along with them, the very face of the Republic. We'll tell you all about it after the theme song. Welcome to the oldest Republic. I'm Federica. Join me in this adventure. Enjoy the episode. In the post-war period, San Marino faced the same challenges featured in the third episode of this podcast: slow reconstruction, fragile economy, fragmented and unprofitable agriculture, and a return to emigration. Italy's politicians didn't look favorably on San Marino's social communist government. As a result, Italy enforced measures to economically boycott the Republic. The situation lasted until 1957, when the Rovereta events changed the political framework. Meanwhile, the Romagna Riviera was experiencing a mass tourism boom, and San Marino began to think about new ways to attract some of those visitors. From 1957 onwards, San Marino experienced a huge wave of changes that transformed all countries of Western Europe. It was the age of cheap cars, new household appliances, and working families becoming consumers. Everyday life changed very quickly, and along with it, the way people traveled, spent their holidays and free time. For the Republic of San Marino, 1957 was a watershed in its recent history. After years of tense relations with Italy, the change in the political majority reopened dialogue with Rome and unlocked a number of opportunities. Customs fee collected by the state increased again, and new investments could be made in public services, modernization works, waterworks, sewers, and waste collection. The most symbolic project was undoubtedly the highway that connected San Marino to Rimini, built in common agreement with the Italian government. The highway was decisive in bringing tourists from the coast to San Marino, but in a sense also represented the end of every hope to rebuild the old railway destroyed during the war. Meanwhile, the San Marino economy was changing. Agriculture, which faced the crisis in the previous years, experienced a rapid decline. Most of the labor force left the fields to engage in other activities, and the plots of land remained small, fragmented, and unprofitable. The government tried to slow the decline with the 1963 Agricultural Development Plan, which offered incentives and soft loans, but the trend was irreversible. As elsewhere, a new world of factories, craftsmen, traders, and tourists emerged in San Marino. Tourism, altogether with handicraft, became the driving force of the new economy. New companies, often family-run, were founded, from furnaces to ceramics workshops, from cement factories to clothing factories. Ceramics in particular became one of the iconic products sold in shops in the historic centre, while hotels grew in number year after year. In 1957, there were only 7. 10 years later, there were already 22. A few numbers will help understand the scale of this change. The number of hotel guests explains the transformation well. Less than 9,000 overnight tourists in 1963, more than 30,000 in 1971, and more than 60,000 in 1980. On average, tourists stayed in San Marino 4 or 5 nights. The growth of day tourism was even more impressive. In 1959, more than 1 million visitors came to the Republic for the first time. This number doubled in 1965 and almost tripled by the end of the 70s. One of the symbols of this period was the Grand Hotel, built in the 1960s by a Milan company on the edge of the historic centre, the grandest and most luxurious hotel San Marino had ever seen. These were years of expansion, optimism, and investments. San Marino was leaving the post-war crisis behind and was trying to find its place in booming Europe. The historic centre, by its nature, did not allow major building extensions. The hotels remained largely small and family-run, and after the growth of the 1960s, the number of properties remained fairly stable. Only later, larger hotels were built, especially outside the historic center. Regarding state initiatives, the 1957 political events did not substantially change the organization of tourism. The Agency for Tourism, already active, continued to operate with a certain continuity. The new majority, although celebrating the new course started with the Riviera events, adopted the approach of the socialist and communist parties that had preceded it. Tourism was to be the engine of economic development. However, there was still a crucial problem. San Marino was heavily dependent on tourism from the coast of Romagna. Visitors arrived mainly in the summer and stayed only a few hours. For this reason, the agency launched a strategy on two fronts. On the one hand, the goal was to create an autonomous and distinctive image for the Republic, independent from the Riviera. On the other, to limit day tourism, encouraging longer stays instead. Various innovative ideas were considered, but the gap between public ambitions and private sector choices was clear. The shortness of visits discouraged structural investments, and many entrepreneurs continued to focus on easy and profitable activities, such as souvenir sales. Consequently, new small souvenir shops opened. According to some economists, this souvenir economy was a weakness. Hit-and-run tourism left few advantages in the long run and the risk of standardizing the offer. The 1970s and 80s were a period of relative stability. Growth continued, but without significant leaps. While the political debate was often stagnant, a certain dynamism emerged in the sports sector. After the war, San Marino hosted shooting competitions, which led to the establishment of the San Marino National Olympic Committee. In the 1980s, however, San Marino began to focus on events of international appeal. In 1981, the first Formula One Grand Prix of San Marino was held in Imola. Although the race took place outside the borders, it was a source of prestige for the country. After its end, in 2006, the Republic chose to sponsor the MotoGP race held in Misano Adriatico. San Marino also obtained official affiliation to UEFA and FIFA, marking a step further in developing its international image through sports. In the last decades, the world tourism landscape has undergone profound changes, closely linked to changes in the economy and society. At a global level, the services sector has outgrown industry, and the way of traveling has also changed. Shorter, more frequent but less residential holidays, accompanied by the wish for authentic experiences linked to nature, culture, and the identity of the territory, are what people look for nowadays. San Marino suffered because of these changes, and in the 1990s experienced a deep crisis in the tourism sector. The figures speak for themselves. Between 1990 and 1995, the number of hotels decreased from 29 to 24. The number of hotel guests collapsed, and even day tourism, which has always been fundamental for the Republic of San Marino, dropped from almost 3 million visitors a year in the 1980s to just over 2 million in the following decade. The context required a profound rethinking of the tourist offer. As elsewhere, San Marino began to look at more modern and diversified forms of tourism. The example of nearby Romagna, which in the same years had begun an important transformation focusing on new accommodation facilities, conference centers, and cultural offers, was inspiring. In San Marino, the debate started in 1992 during a conference promoted by the State Office for Tourism, which had replaced the agency. From that debate, a clear conclusion emerged. The Republic was lagging behind on many fronts and risked losing its ability to compete in the market. Yet, despite good intentions, action was slow and uncertain. Faced with the crossroad between innovation and conservation, the country, at least initially, chose to remain tied to the traditional model of day tourism, which was considered simpler and immediately profitable. The link between tourism and trade was strengthened, with a particular focus on quick visits for shopping purposes. In short, in the 1990s, there was a difficult transition for San Marino. The tourism sector was seeking a new balance between tradition and innovation. The first active responses did not come until the next few decades, but the debate that began in those years laid the foundations for a change that is still ongoing today. In the 1990s, San Marino began to redefine its trade and tourism sector. One of the most significant trends was the development of the commercial areas close to the border along the highway, where the government encouraged the opening of large shopping centers to attract both summer tourists from the Riviera and residents from neighboring areas. At a time when consumers were starting to travel many kilometers to find more advantageous prices, San Marino presented itself as a convenient shopping destination, thanks to a favorable tax system. Thus, a new type of visitor emerged, the shopping tourist. Unlike the classic tourist of the historic center, attracted by architectural beauty and souvenirs, this new kind of visitor came to San Marino with very specific goals and often did not even set foot in the heart of the Republic. Therefore, two distinct hubs emerged: the small traditional shops in the city center and the large shopping centers in Dogana and Serravalle, close to the border with Italy, each with its own type of customer. At the start of the new millennium, San Marino experienced a tourism revival. New sectors emerged: conference tourism, collaborations among operators, restoration of public buildings, and strategic use of the web. The 2009 inclusion of the historic center of San Marino and Borgo Maggiore and of Mount Titano on the UNESCO World Heritage List represented a turning point, lighting the international spotlight on San Marino as a symbol of democracy and historical identity. The numbers confirm this recovery. Over 100,000 tourists were recorded in 2008. After years of uncertainty, the Republic was able to rethink itself, rediscovering in its history and uniqueness a new path for the future. In the next episode, we will talk about another crucial change and a fundamental chapter in the history of San Marino's civil rights. That's all for today. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back in a week. Until next time, goodbye.